Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Shared Space with Quida and Chap on BlackUSA.News dot news. Sorry. Um, Today we have our guests Lindsay Peel and Tiara Sidnor Diggs. And I guess if you guys want to introduce yourself, Miss Peel, if you'd like to go first.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much to you both for having me here this evening. My name is Lindsay Peel, and I am the founder and principal consultant at Kingdom Vision Consulting. We are a financial services firm that specializes in personal and small business financial capacity building for entrepreneurs of color. And we do that by focusing on five key areas of finance known as class credit worthiness, long term wealth, asset protection, strategic banking relationships, and strategic asset accumulation. I am also a radio host for the Real Deal Radio Show, where we provide you with the resources, empathy, accountability, and literacy for your wealth journey. So I am very glad to be here. Thank you so much again for having me.
Excellent. Nice to meet you, Miss Tiara.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Chap and Laquita, for having me on as well. Nice to meet you, Lindsay. My name is Tiara. I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm the co-owner of Keys of Hope Consultants. We are a mental health consultant agency specializing in supporting organizations locally, nationally, and now internationally because we just did some work with the Jamaican Task Force for mental health.
Great.
Just really training all types of people around mental health, wellness, and trauma informed care practices. I'm also a Baltimore City Public School social worker. I'm an adjunct professor, a doctoral student, a mother, a lover, a dreamer, a wife, and a person who is just here to serve. That's who I am. And I'm glad
I
to be here this
love
evening.
that.
Yeah,
That is
welcome.
why
Wow, what a
we had to
privilege.
get you on,
Yes.
Tiara. Like when people, you're the type of person that when people say, "What do you do?" Like I hear you saying, "Whatever it takes." You just named all the different roles and hats, and I'm sure you missed some. And same with Lindsay. Yes, we have a radio show which is newly launched. So congratulations on that, Miss Peel.
Thank you
How
so
would
much.
we tune in to listen and hear you
Yes.
speak?
Yes. So you can tune in every Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time by going to WDRBmedia.com, or you can look up WDRB Media on iHeartRadio, the TuneIn app, Streamer, and YouTube. If you'd like to listen from your desktop, from the internet, you can go to the link bit.ly/TRD live.
Excellent. And that's right on time because then at 10 o'clock you can tune into Donnie's show, BlackUSA.News at 10 o'clock. So that's perfect.
Yes,
Perfect.
right. It just goes right in order. The universe always does what it needs to do for us to get it
Always.
done,
Yeah,
right?
Right. That's
absolutely.
right.
So,
By
So
any
so I,
means
I, had a, I
necessary.
had a comment, ladies, and this is
go ahead.
just something that struck me right before the show. So Saturday was Dr. King's birthday. Today was the
Hmm.
holiday, and my one son says to me, he said, "Well, Dad, why didn't we celebrate?" And we did community stuff over the weekend. I had to work today, and my kids are mixed, and so that is a good question. Why didn't we celebrate? Like, there's a lot of talk shows and news shows and that, like a lot of um, conversations happening, but I wouldn't call them celebratory. A lot of them, especially Tierra, I think of you and your mental health community and culture, because
Hmm.
a lot of the conversations were angry conversations and conversations about how we're still in the colored waiting room 60
Hmm.
years later for things that were promised over half a century
Hmm.
ago, right? So I
Absolutely.
think that speaks to what you do in your field. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but it was just a great question. My 15-year-old asked me, and I was like, you know what, man, why didn't we celebrate differently or more intentionally?
And I think the question becomes, it's all about practice, right? And so with anything, it's about our daily practice. And of course, we want to highlight these special days that we have on calendars. But what does it really truly mean to serve in the name of Martin Luther King and some of the other people who have come before us, or even who are still continuing to live today and serving with us? And so I guess the answer I would say to your son is not necessarily that we didn't do anything, but what can we continue to do? Because again, it's not just about one day. Of course, we make it about one day, but it's about our daily practices. How are we being kind to each other? How are we helping our community? How are we building each other up? How are we building our households up
Mm,
that then flows into the community? So what does that look like? And so, we do in many ways are intentional, but I think it's just the way that we look at it. We have to look at it through a different lens. That it's just not about one day or 2 days. It's just about every day. How are we practicing and aligning ourselves with some of the teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King and other great people who have led the way for us.
But I
what?
think something we can add though is, Tierra, you and I were talking, and some of the MLK events that were planned had to
Mm-hmm.
go virtual because
Mm-hmm.
Omarion, he out here on tour, y'all. And we
Mm-hmm.
need not to be affected. Like, we have to be smart about what we're doing in our communities, with
Yep.
our kids, with everything. So yeah, we could have did something virtual, or transition to virtual. But typically, I'm out there building with folks at the tool,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, oh no, we're not picking up hammers and wrenches this time around because
Yeah.
this variant is doing. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something we also need to keep in perspective with our mental health and
Yep.
everything. Like Chap said, like, how can we be intentional about it and still be
Be
safe?
safe. Absolutely.
Like, yep.
Well, also, TR, you mentioned about just making daily choices to build our homes up, and I think part of that speaks to Ms. Peel as far as
Mm-hmm.
building up through financial wealth, right? Because
Yes.
here we are 60 years later, and we're still earning 25 to 50% less than what people who look like me make in the same position, with the same responsibilities, if not more. I always, I'm beyond my sons. I also mentor a lot of young men in Baltimore, and we always have that discussion at some point about how, and this is just my perception and experience, is how my young men have to set the bar higher to get treated equal, right? There's an expectation that we have to impress the white business owners or the white employer or the white teacher by doing more than what's expected of their white counterparts. Um, so yeah, I just, and I think
Absolutely.
financially, we need, Dr. King said we need a blueprint, right? What's the
Mm-hmm.
blueprint, Lindsay? Lindsay, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. No, you're right on, you're right on it. And then when you think about as entrepreneurs of color, it's even more difficult for us to really move our families forward when we think about generational wealth. First we have to break generational poverty, so, and that's not easy. That doesn't happen overnight. That is a holistic process. It's really a lifestyle change for our entire community. When you talk about mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, physical health, it all has everything to do with our financial health. But it just, I think that now, especially because we're still in the middle of a global pandemic 2 years later, I think that our communities now see the sense of urgency that's really on getting your financial house in order, because one, the pandemic isn't playing with us, but two, when you really just take a seat and to really just see what's happening right now, like, we haven't even seen the worst of it. The worst of it is going to be once the pandemic is over. So, and we haven't even gotten that far yet. So it definitely opens our eyes, and it makes a lot more room at the table for financial conversations in a way that we have never really experienced before, especially as a community of color.
No, that is so true. And it always goes back to rules that were made, 100 years ago, and it's still impacting us today. And it's like, hey, what about those reparations? Oh, you can't do that because race is now a protected class. Well, how do we correct this? Because I don't like how do we make the playing fields even? There's so many organizations that are pouring resources back into the community and helping us with our mental health and our financial fitness. But if the system is set against us, it's still so much that we can do before we feel like we're just treading water. Go ahead, Chap.
Well, I was saying, I think we need to recalibrate, reset, and set the bar, because, like, again, Dr. King spoke about one of his speeches about how legislation can't make a man love me, but it can stop him from lynching me, and I think that's pretty good too. But is that really at this point now? And in that context, it was appropriate. But at this point now, 60 years later, we shouldn't be satisfied with that. We shouldn't stop there, right? We need to demand more from the people that represent us, because as leaders in the community, right? Because they're not the leaders. No elected official is a leader. They're elected to represent, and they forget that. And I've had hugely discouraging conversations trying to move, whether it's a legislation or a policy, or make a change for the community for the better, or something that just makes sense. And it's always come down to, well, I'm the leader and you need my permission. And I'm looking at these dudes like, how do I not put you on your heels, but remind you that you're representing us? And actually, I'm the leader, and Quida's the leader, and Lindsay's the leader, right? Like, we kind of lay down and let them get in a position to represent us, but then with all that power, they assume leadership. And I can tell you the problem is that we don't have any leaders representing us. That's part of the problem in Baltimore City.
Right, or representing us with a one voice, a unified voice. Like, we know that there's violence. We know that we need better schools. Like, we talk about all the things we know, but we've been talking about all the things we know for years and years. So it's really like, how do we pull together and just pull Baltimore City and the school system along with us? Because the work needs to be done, and we can't.
Mm-hmm.
There's houses. Oh, I'm sorry. Just one more comment. There's houses still boarded up from the race wars in 68 and 69 in Baltimore.
Oh, who are you telling?
Right?
You know that I know.
Yeah, so it's just absurd.
So wait, the absurdity is the 16,000 vacant and abandoned homes that belong to Baltimore City. What's more absurd is that there's closer to 40,000 that aren't owned by the city and just not necessarily dilapidated, but not being taken care of. This isn't some place that is adding, property value, increasing property value, or adding resources to the community. It's just someone's asset sitting there, and they're waiting for Baltimore to catch up. But we can't catch up if all this other stock is just sitting there. Like, people, you have to know how supply and demand works. If we have 40,000 vacant homes, please stop sitting on Baltimore's homes. Go invest somewhere else, because those homes are not going to boom in the next 5 to 10 years. We need people to live in them now. Go ahead,
part of the hustle is, if they hang on to it long enough and a community gets run down enough and the city claims eminent domain, that's where you make your money on them vacants, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem.
By not developing them.
That's the problem. There should be some sort of incentive for maybe us Baltimoreans to stay here or invest here or something. But what we've been doing has not been working.
Got a comment from True Grit, Mr. Noble. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for chiming in. Thanks for checking in.
Absolutely. So, yeah, Dr. King's birthday today, man. I tell you, one of my favorite memories as a kid, I guess as a young man, really. I grew up in Baltimore, but when I was in Florida, I was driving and listening to the radio, and there's this one station in Jacksonville, Florida, Duval, right?
Duval.
And on Martin Luther King Day, for 24 hours, they would have all the local DJs come in and spin the wheels for like an hour or two at a time, and they'd run Dr. King's speeches with music behind it. And these guys created the score for like these speeches. And it was the same speeches over and over again because we have limited audio from that time from Dr. King. But the way these guys filled in a score for it and actually sitting all day and just listening to his messages and over again, like they changed me. And that's why I have behind me one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King is that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And we think about the light, right? You think about when you turn on a light, instantly you can see, right? There's no struggle between light and dark. There's like in the movies, there's a struggle between good and bad, and it's represented light and dark. And there's no struggle, man. When I shine a flashlight somewhere, darkness is expelled. And so, we need to empower and encourage each other to find our light, illuminate the light in others that maybe they don't see themselves or they can't uncover due to struggling with poverty, Lindsay, or due to struggling with mental unhealthiness, Tiara. And if we can dig them out and they just see a little bit of light and it can grow, and we all through unity, right? Through unity, we put our lights together, like darkness will be expelled out of any space we enter, right? But it's got to be intentional because there's a system of oppression, and not just the government legislation, but in this world that is subtly built to keep people's lights extinguished.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't know if it's subtle, but I like that you use the word subtle. I do like that you
sometimes it is, right? Sometimes it is like something subtle, like not so subtle if you're woke, but if you're not paying attention, right? Like a liquor store and a lottery store on every corner, right? There's a reservation. So
banks.
Yep,
right,
no banks.
right.
No grocery stores.
Right? And I was going to share as a native to America, as part of my heritage, there's reservations where for 20 miles leaving the reservation, there's nothing but lottery and liquor stores. You can't, like, there's a casino, there's liquor stores. You can't even get to a grocery store without passing all of those first, right? And those are the subtleties. Those are the subtleties of infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, so I think some of the things that we've been doing, and even the people on, this live stream, is that we've realized we have to take matters into our own hands. Like, we all knew that there's a lack of banking, a lack of grocery stores. Well, Lindsay, her background is in banking. She has the whole financial fitness down pat. That's what we need. We need that. Tiara has us on the mental health. Like, we need to take care of that as well. Baltimore homes, affordable housing, I got you. Power Fest, reaching back into the community and giving back and showing the people who are building community. Like, all of these are the things that we need to continue to do. One of the things that I think people, I guess, can tap in on is honing in on your own writing skills and, sending stuff into like even BlackUSA.News. And telling your story and continuing to tell your story so that people understand what is going on and that you understand that your voice is important too. Like, we don't need to keep hearing from the people that Chap were talking about. Like, what I would normally say is mediocre white men. We don't need to keep hearing from them. Like, we need to hear from all of the people in all of the lanes and all of the facets.
And it's important that you guys, it's important that individual people tell their story, because, I always joke with people, like anytime somebody asks me to preach, because as a chaplain, sometimes I get asked and I always turn them down, but sometimes you can't. And the first thing I let people know when I get up there is like, look, man, I'm not called to be a lawyer. I haven't memorized the Bible like many pastors have, or I'm expected to. I said, I'm not called to be the judge. I'm not even a defendant or a plaintiff. I'm just called to be a witness, right? And so that's the importance of our roles, if nothing else, is to testify to our life experiences and our truths. Because even if I grew up in the same home as you, Lindsay, who better to tell your story than you, right? Like, I might know about it, but you have that truth inside you. And so important to write it down, like Quida said, write a book, write an editorial, put it out there, because even with one published item, you become influential. Build on that, right? Like Dason wrote a book at 19. One of our partners, Dason Brooks, wrote 19 wrote a children's book about being Black in America, and everywhere I go, that's the first thing people learn about him. I'm like, my man's a published author. Like, here we go,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it's important though that we tell our narrative, because if we don't, then like Quida was saying, people that run the country or people that look like me will tell your story, and it's going to not be the whole truth. It's going to be
Right.
it's not.
Or just not as impactful, coming from
Sure.
your voice,
Yeah.
there's a difference. Even when people, put together books, again, it's something different when an actual person is telling a story. And so that's why even things around like journaling, like, and I think you can be as creative as you want to be around telling your story. At my school during a virtual time, a part of the mental health segment that I did with a lot of my students was
Uh-oh. You
um,
froze up
When
there.
that
Say
happens,
it again. Say it again. You froze
uh-oh.
up.
there
Oh,
you
am
go.
I here now? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing you
Oh,
shared
so
about.
during the pandemic, I was sharing that some of the things that I was doing, because I had to get very creative with my interactions with my students, which were both elementary and middle, but it was all around how can we integrate telling our story through music or art. And so some of them wrote songs, some of them
Yes.
we had drumming. So we ordered all these drums and I went and delivered them to the children. And we would get on Zoom and we would talk about, sharing what's going on, how they're feeling, or even just writing a story. My colleague Juan Nance got a couple of eighth graders together and they wrote a book together about just what was happening during this pandemic and their experience, and they published it. And so now 5 of our young ladies are now authors at the
Wow.
age of 14 and 15 years old. And so
Wow.
again,
That
it was
is
their story.
beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
Hmm.
again, that goes for adults and children alike. Sometimes we think we have to be these what New York bestseller people to have an impact, and no, it just takes one person to read your story and connect. And now your light has now shined the light on someone else's darkness, and now they're able to see their light. So
That's
Yes.
interesting, Tiara.
I think I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, no, no. I
No, no, go
just
ahead, Lindsay.
adding to that. I think that speaks to the importance of community, to
mhm,
providing support, to having a tribe. I know
Mm.
we all grew up on the saying that it takes a village to raise a
mhm.
child, but it takes a village, it takes a community to raise
To raise
all
the
of us
village.
Community.
to,
Yes.
Mhm.
raise the business, to build the business, to redevelop the community. Like, it truly takes all of us. And I think the sooner that we realize that as a body, I think
Mhm.
the sooner and the better off we will be as a community when it comes to
Yes.
Mhm.
really rebuilding ourselves. I know somebody mentioned earlier that we need to stop begging for reparations. I mean, in all reality, we have what we need within our community to give
We
Right.
ourselves
do.
what we need. We literally have it
Mhm.
all. It's just about
Period.
figuring out how do we work together. It's
Yeah.
also being able to have certain people to understand that we also don't need too many what's the saying, too many chiefs and not enough Indians.
Mhm.
Like,
Yes.
some people, it's just we need to really learn how to work together as a community. We
Mhm.
have so many resources, and we're competing for the same grant money over here to do the same things. If we just came together as a body, I'm telling you, we would see so much transformation in our communities.
And Lindsay, I was literally thinking the same thing. And that's been my thing for the last couple of years, about just there needing to be a cultural shift of thinking in
Yeah.
Baltimore. I've been in the
Yes.
field now for 20 years. And what I can say is there's been a great change, being a social worker, with the amount of resources. We are oversaturated in Baltimore with a lot of resources. But
Mm.
as Lindsay stated, so many people are going after the same money. We're working with the same people, but yet we're not working together. And
Right.
at the end of the day, if we think about it, if we literally were collectively coming together, we would be a bad group of people in
Yes.
Baltimore. We
Unstoppable.
already
Way.
are. We already
Yeah.
are. But just imagine what it would look like if we truly all began to work together
Resources.
as leaders. If we all came together,
Now you got
to break down these systems, to, just all the different things that, again, we're individually doing. Like, what does that look like when we put the picture together? Think of a
hmm
puzzle sometime. If we
Yeah.
put our puzzle pieces together, imagine the beauty of that puzzle, and then not just being little pieces here, a few pieces there.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
you
So,
guys.
Tiara, I'll add two things just real quick. So, one
Yeah.
thing, there is an Indie Book Awards. Chap, don't take the ticker down. You took it down last time. So,
Oh,
I
sorry.
wanted to share the
I'm sorry.
ticker. So this is something that your students who just wrote their book can apply to. These
Okay.
are indie book awards. There's about 25 to 50 different categories. You don't have to be a top seller. You can be a self-published author. But
Okay.
this, to your point, it just shares the platform. So that's the
Mhm.
one thing. And then Tiara, like you're saying, like if we were to get together like in an organized fashion, because Miss
Mhm.
Peel is doing what she needs to do for her community. Chap is doing what he needs to do for his community. You're doing what you need to do. But if I bought my tiny homes and financial literacy and
Yes.
nonprofit work and mental health, if we were to spread that all throughout West Baltimore, East Baltimore, South,
Baltimore.
and not being so siloed, like there is
Mhm.
so many.
Yes.
I hate to use the phrase crabs in a barrel because crabs don't belong in a barrel. You know what I'm saying? So I don't
Mhm.
like to use that phrase,
Okay,
but
Jay Z.
listen, I'm just trying to tell you. You see what I'm saying? Like if we could just on together and figure out how to form like Voltron out here
Mhm.
and just keep working at it. Like we're getting it done. We are definitely getting it done. But I think to your point, if we were to do it in a strategic fashion, there would be less overlap and less fewer people not getting exactly what they need exactly when they need it.
And it would be transformational because, again, being a social worker, I also teach and talk a lot about the difference between transactional engagement versus transformative engagement. And transactional engagement involves a lot of I'm giving. So, we're having clothing drives, we're giving out books, we're giving out, which are great things. But what was the transformation? How was that person's life any different? Did we teach them a skill? Did we set them up so that whether Miss Tierra is
Yes.
here or Miss Tierra wins the lottery and go retire, that community can still thrive because Miss Tierra not only gave them something, she also gave them some skills where whether I'm here or not, this community can still continue. And they're now going to teach their children, and their children are going to teach other people, and they're going to continue to thrive. And so even with that, like once we learn how to work together, we also need to start shifting our brain from a transactional engagement to true transformation in our city.
Yes.
Say it again. Say it again for one time
True
for the people in the back.
transformation,
Folks
true
in the back.
transformation engagement. Not what I'm doing for
Tierra.
you, but what are we doing to empower people for them to do for themselves so
Wow.
that whether we're there or not, they can continue this work because it's all about them at the end of the day. And sometimes in our spaces, we have a lot of people that make the work about them, and it has nothing to do with us. I'm just a vessel. I'm just a vessel here to shed some light as we're talking about, and then I'm out so that then they can take their light and they can continue to spread the light. But when we make it about ourselves, sometimes that's where we wound up with the quote unquote crabs in the barrel and I'm doing
Yeah.
this or that grant is mine or I did this for 21218 or whatever the case may be. And it becomes I. And it's not about I. It's
Mm.
about we.
Yes, you're
That's
so right. Like the war of the zip codes, that's the thing in Baltimore too. It's like we're all trying to help everybody, but it the way that the funding works is
Mm-hmm.
it turns it
yeah.
into like this game of mafia. And it's like, no, that's not
And we
really what.
and at some point
Yeah.
as people who are called to serve, we have to have a real conversation about the a real conversation about the design of that, right? Because
Mm.
it truly is set up designed to be that way. When we talk about systems are set up to work the way they're supposed to
Yes,
work,
the
whether we like
nonprofit
them or not.
industry is very much systemically racist and holds
Oh,
up white supremacy. Like, because how are you going
absolutely.
to tell me what my neighborhood needs and why
Mm-hmm.
you can only give me a certain amount of money and why I can only do this with these amount of people? It's like you're focusing on housing, but my people need more than housing. They need
That's right.
housing and food
That's
and
right.
And
resources and
even
technology. Like,
Yeah.
and even in the mental health world, so there are zones, and so certain people, if you hook up with certain entities, I won't name all the names, but there are certain entities, if you know what you know and know what I know, that there are certain zones, if you are not a part of that zone or if you don't have a connection to that, you cannot do business in that particular area. And again,
Mm.
why is that? If people need help or you want to serve or you're called to serve, we should be able to serve where we want to, but why are these things put in place? And again, how can we collectively begin to dismantle those things so again we can really truly begin to do the work that needs to be done?
Hence why, it's me transitioning from the banking industry into working full time for myself. It's monumental because, working for large institutions, there's so much red tape around things that
Mm.
you just can and cannot say, and there's so much delegation when it comes to what our time should look like as a banker, as a leader. They want us closing more deals than doing more educating, if I can be honest, right? And the
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
thing is that a lot of our people need a financial education to even make strategic financial decisions. Like there is a level of educating that has to be done before sometimes they can even use the products and services that the institution has. But
Mhm.
it just is it's so much more difficult when you're on the inside trying to make that change sometimes because I was getting burnt out. I trying to help everybody everywhere, but
Mhm.
also when you're working for a specific institution, if they technically don't have any banking products and services with you, then technically they shouldn't be a priority, on my list. Granted, they work for me. I was coaching people from anywhere, whether you're a counselor with me or not. But it's just it's gonna take us being very intentional. Every one of us
Mhm.
who are in whatever industry that we're in, we have to be very intentional and to really, like you said earlier, Tierra, instead of looking at it as an it's about we. How can we move our community forward? Because honestly,
Mhm.
we're never free until all of us are truly free. I don't
Mhm.
care how much wealth you accumulate in real life.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the TV, you see the same thing that I see that's impacting our community. So it truly is about us being able to do it together.
Mhm.
Yeah, and having that collective voice, that unified voice, it really puts us in a position of power, a
Right.
position of controlling what's around us. And just having that unified voice, I mean, now we know where the plan is. We're not just
Mhm.
out, willy nilly. I do think that it's really important to continue to mention like the financial aspect. Like,
Mhm.
it's hard to live being poor, y'all. Like being
It
Mhm.
broke is not cool. And then like all the hoops that you have to jump through to prove that you're broke so that you can use the resources,
Yep.
like that alone will drive you crazy. Okay. Like so you
Mhm.
want me to prove that I can't pay my bills, but just giving you the bills that I can't pay isn't enough. Like, what more do you need?
Mhm.
So, I mean, to your point, Tierra and Lindsay, like, we need to look at it in the whole, like,
Holistic.
ecosystem.
Mhm.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
whole holistic
Absolutely.
ecosystem, tear the patriarchy in the
Absolutely.
system down and build it
Mhm.
up.
Yep.
Because really, we don't, I mean, defund the police, do all the things that need to be done to get these babies what they need to grow
Yep.
into full contributing adults. Like that's all we're really trying to do is raise these babies right. Like, come on,
Yep.
let's be real.
That's the truth.
I do, I do have to be honest and say that there is a shift that's happening, right now that we are experiencing. And we can't necessarily really put our finger on it all, but it's happening. And I do think that it's happening for the betterment of our community, to be honest
Mhm.
with you. Some of us needed to experience this pandemic in the way that we have. Some of us had to fall on our faces in the ways that we had
Mm-hmm.
in order to really shift our mindset, to really focus on what's ahead and really redefining our future. So it's like when I think about the last 2 years, it's like it's definitely bittersweet. It's unfortunate. We've had a lot of things that have happened to us that are very unfortunate. However, I do think that the transformation, the real transformation that's going to come after this, I think it
Mhm.
will be worth it. I don't think we as a community will ever be the same.
Mm-mm. And I definitely agree. I said this was like a blessing and a curse.
Yeah,
Of course, some of the horrible things that have come with the pandemic, but
yeah,
I also agree that it was an opportunity to just stop and take a pause
yeah.
and really look at what's been going on, because honestly, nothing that we're seeing is new. It's just that we had no choice to look away. We've been able to look away. We've been distracted. We've been able to go to the gym, go to happy hour, go to brunch, go to a party,
Even
all
watch
these things.
sports, but the sports stopped.
Yep, everything
Yep.
stopped. We had to sit with ourselves. We had to sit with the systems that we're in. We had to sit with the homes that we live in. All of these things and really look at, oh my gosh, this is what I've been, running away from for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And like I agree, Lindsay, that this is a great time for us to really make some really good changes if people would just
Yeah.
take advantage of it. But of course, change is difficult. Change is scary. Chaos becomes the norm, even though we don't like it. It feels
Oh
funky,
yes.
it feels nasty, it makes us feel uncomfortable, but it's still change. But
Yeah.
again, it's also a time where we can do some shifting. That transformation we've been talking about, all of these things truly could happen if we truly allow it to. So
Yeah.
I totally agree with everything that you said.
So how do we make sure that the changes actually stay? Because I feel like you guys are really optimistic, and I'm just not. Because it like blew my mind when kids were not allowed to get vaccinated, but school wasn't hybrid to begin with. Like,
Um,
that didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But
it,
I'm not a parent, and I'm not trying to raise my kid and work and be their teacher during virtual school. So all these things, I'm just like, are we figuring it out in the chaos, or are we still just in the chaos?
I think
Probably
that
both.
it is
It's a
there.
both
That's
and.
the
It doesn't
thing.
have to be a or. I truly believe in
Yes.
a both and
Okay.
Yes.
situations. I think yes, it is. Things are shifting and people are at the table, like myself and others. Again, I also, like I said, work for Baltimore City Public Schools. And again, I've been in this field for 20 something years, and so I feel like I've grown enough as a professional and as a human being to not just sit at a table and not say anything. And so
Right.
you do have plenty of us
yes.
who are in here advocating, but then there's the and there are still people who are locked into this old way of thinking of how we got to do things when it comes to how we educate our children. And some people that look very much like us, quite a bit of people that look very much like us, to be honest. And so, again, it's about the people like us making sure that we continue to have those voices and we advocate until we, continue to just hopefully see continuous shifts and changes in the mindsets of those other people who, unfortunately, get to make some of those big decisions. But it's about, again, us having a voice, but then as we talked about, the voice and choice of the community. And so again, Laquita, you mentioned that you're not a parent and you're not those types of things, but you are still a voice of the community.
That's right.
Parents, you know people who felt like they lost their voice and never had a voice, or they don't even know that they do have that.
Right.
Mm,
If you have a child in Baltimore City Public School, you have a voice. I don't care if your voice is third grade education voice to a PhD voice. You have a voice. And so you just making sure that you encourage them, you elevate them, you teach them, like, look, when you go to that board meeting, I've done sessions with people where literally I'm role playing with parents of what to say when you go to advocate for your child. It wasn't a therapeutic session. It was, this is what you're going to say to build their confidence. So even just those types of things are things that people can do, even
Yeah.
if you don't necessarily feel like you have a stake in that particular segment of the world, but you do, because again, you're connected to parents who may feel like, they're not going to listen to me. I just work for McDonald's. Oh, yes, they will listen to you,
Yeah.
because
Right.
at the end of the day, they want you at McDonald's. In order for
that's
you to be at McDonald's, those schools need to be safe. Some policies need to be in place. Some things need to be happening to make sure that you can go to work and make sure you can do the job you need to do with a good conscience, but also make sure that your child is safe, which means
Right.
that, yes, your McDonald's working voice need to be at that table as well, you know?
mm,
So
yeah.
that's
Yes.
how we empower the community. We teach them sometime as well.
That's
I
right.
think one of the great things that came out of the whole chaos of it all is that we recognized what real essential workers were. Like,
Mm.
there was this air about who was important, and it was really around the dollar amount of what people made. But essential workers are the
Hmm.
people that are in our grocery stores. Like, we knew this, but I think other people needed to know exactly
Hmm.
who is keeping this thing going.
Yep.
Like, in so many ways, it's not the banks. Like, y'all are actually tearing a whole bunch of shit down, but we're not going to talk about that. Excuse my language. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes we just have to put the things on the map and make it clear as to what's really going on. Like, our essential workers are working at these grocery stores because we need to eat every day. They are driving our kids to school on these buses, and I don't think we saw that coming. So that is one of the chaotic things that I'm like, I'm glad y'all see it now.
Yeah.
Maybe minimum wage will really be considered, and these things will be talked about in a better light, not just, oh, the man and the man and the man. It's like, no, these are families and communities that are, you know?
Yeah.
If I can comment, Quida, I wanted to answer your question on how do we make the changes and the empowerment, how do you make it stick? And part of my lifestyle of service, and Quida as well has witnessed and participated, is making sure that with our experience and our resources and relationships, we create leaders at a young age. So my son's 15, 18. If I bring a 12-year-old with me and people ask, oh, like we're doing an event, hey, where do I set up the tent? I point to the 12-year-old. He's in charge. I'm joking, but I'm not, right? I need young people to understand. Chief Melvin Russell did a camp where we took 50 of the most at-risk or high-risk kids on paper, either through the Baltimore City public schools or with the police, and we take them to this leadership summit and do this camp overnight. Everything is really great. At the end of the week, like what the kids didn't know when they went to camp, to give you a little background, everyone involved was police, right? So there was your counselors are police, the people cooking are police, people cleaning your cabin, are all police, but the kids didn't know it, and they built great relationships, had a great experience. And then end of the week, the police would reveal themselves at the cookout. Oh, counselor / detective, Chris Hall, and everybody, and the kids are betrayed, right? You see it on their face, and you see the change when they're like, but that's my homeboy, like everything, it was really good at building relationships. And the reason I bring that up is that every day around the campfire, we had a mantra the kids would repeat back, and it's, I'm a lead, I'm somebody, I'm loved, I'm a leader, I'm a leader, I'm a leader. And then taking that and articulating that to the street or to wherever our boots are hitting the ground, Dason is, I always go back to Dason because he's a kid I built a relationship with at that camp in 2018. And now 2022, he's published a book. He's on a scholarship to Coppin State. At 20 years old, he got his articles for 501c3 for a mentorship program called Level Up, right? So it was just, he's the epitome of how we make that change stick. We give it to the kids. We tell them, look, dude, you do it. You're in charge. What do you need? Then you call me. Like think about if because Lindsay, when you shared what you do, instantly my wheels are turning. Like, okay, so my young leader Dason just asked me how to write a budget for his nonprofit to present for grants, and you have a financial literacy, passion. Then why wouldn't I send him to our community, right? And Tierra, the language you're using is so important and empowering. I was thinking today before the show of I was thinking of how to share with the community the words you're using, right? Because there's power in unity. There's power in diverse unity, right? Because none of us are the same. And there's words like you said, the difference between transactional and transformational. Like all these ideas need to be shared. And, Lindsay, when you say it takes, the mantra, it takes a village to raise a family, one of our community brothers says it takes a village to raise a family, not just the child, and so it's so encouraging to hear you guys. We're on the same page, and people have a passion for the community, and they're using the same language now. And part of that unity is through language, right? If we all start using the word or give meaning to a word, then that's the word, regardless of what the textbook says, right? We create the context, we create the culture for the community, and the best way to do that is give it to the kids and empower them. If I was 19 and the 4 people on the screen came up to me and said, bro, whatever you want to do, got your back, down to the gas money. You couldn't tell me what I couldn't do. And that's just 4 adults, right? Imagine our whole community, and that's part of my nonprofit is that unity tip, man. The whole point of the nonprofit that me and Lewis, it's Lewis's vision. I'm the vice president. Was to do a 1 day, all day festival, bringing all the nonprofits together in one place where the community could find them, right? Because there's programs out there at the time when we were organizing it before COVID. There was a group that law firm that gave free law services to ex-offenders. So this program, you could get free, like it could be family law, it could be help with your DUI. It didn't matter. The only thing to qualify was that you had been locked up before, but people don't know it's available. Do you know what I mean? And so really great programs like that. And so unity is key, man. You guys, I love the language I'm hearing. I'm gonna shut up now, but it's beautiful.
No, but you're right, Chap, because like you said, like we're all using the same language. Like this is where that collective thought process, this is where that strategic organizing, this is how we change communities. This is how we pour into one another. We continue to elevate, we continue to share the resources. Because like you said, people know that we have everything we need, but we don't always know exactly where to reach for that helping hand or to grab that check that's sitting there waiting for us because we deserved it, right? Like all of these things are already just right there waiting for us, and we just need to figure it out collectively and then make it sustainable, because building sustainable communities is the way that we're going to continue to keep this thing going. Because I'm telling you something, like as many things as we change, they're going to keep trying to roll it back, y'all. You can't get an abortion in Texas. Like, what are we talking about? Okay, like, but it's too much. It's too much. Like, that's a part of the chaos. Like, you're not going to enforce a mask, but I can't tell you what I want to do with my own body. Like, these things are crazy to me. What are we talking about? And so, go ahead, Lindsay. Go ahead.
I think that one, yes, these things are crazy, but I think the sooner that we realize that these things aren't going to be changed overnight, the sooner we'll actually start doing things that we can control. We get very bent out of shape for things that are beyond our control, and we should be upset, we should voice our opinion, but it's also what happens after we're done talking about it. Are we going to actually put some action to what we're saying? I think that the sooner we realize certain things, but also the sooner we recognize the fact that it takes action, and it takes some of us being in different places around the world in different spaces. We need some of us in Congress who think like us. We need some of us boots on the ground. We need some of us helping to grow these small businesses, working in these incubators. We need us, the people who think like us, about forward movement in the schools, teaching our babies for real, but we're not going to really do that as a collective until we just really understand and address some hard realizations. Once we do, I don't doubt that us as a community won't figure out how to make it work for us. We have been through so much over centuries, but look at where we are. And when you think about how far we've come in chaos, through chaos, with us not working together, just imagine what we're going to do when enough of us who thinks like this really starts to make the moves that we need to really see made in our community.
And I think also, if I can add to that quickly, us just modeling what it means to lead from your seat. And when we lead from our seat, it means that we change the narrative of what a leader could look like. Because yes, the leader could look like Mayor Brandon Scott, but the leader can also look like Mr. Troy, who sells snowballs every summer, but he's an entrepreneur, but he knows all the children and he knows everyone's grandmother and grandfather. He's a leader. So changing the narrative of what leading from our seat looks like, and that we can do small things and big things. Again, whether, like I said, we have the titles or we don't have the titles, we all have the ability to lead. As Chap was talking about children, we definitely want to plant that seed early, but sometimes our older people, 20 and up, need that reminder too, that you still can be a leader as well. Our 40-year-olds, our 50-year-olds who again sometimes don't think of themselves. We've been leading households for centuries. We've been leading communities for centuries. And most people won't even make it to the news or have some big platform to say who they are, but they've been leading. So we have it in us as a people. We know how to do this. It's again just us changing the narrative. And again, people like us in different spaces, that the times that we do have these opportunities to uplift people so that they do know, like, you are a leader and you can do this. But then, of course, planting those seeds in our children so that they can continue to take the baton and continue to lead as well.
Absolutely. And
Okay,
then
Pastor. Go
I'm,
ahead.
I'm,
Go ahead.
I'm gonna say one more thing, and with that, it just, I think that the movement that's happening in our communities when it comes to our financial health and our mental health, I think those two combined, the work that we really see happening, I mean, let's be honest, we're seeing more of us go to therapy, talk about therapy, than we ever have before. We know we grew up in the house.
Absolutely.
What happens in this house stays in this
Stays in this
house.
house.
Yes, yes, yes.
Not to talk about your family business out in the street.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really see the shift that's happening in our communities, we are going to therapy. We are healing. We are reclaiming our peace and our energy.
Mm-hmm.
That partnered with understanding the importance of being financially stable and
Mm-hmm.
really being able to see how literally your entire life can be uprooted and changed literally at the drop of a dime.
Yep.
Those two things happening right now, those two things happening in our community is what gives me so much hope about our future,
Mm-hmm.
because it's happening. It's
It
happening.
is. It's happening, and it's happening right in front of us. And I just want to say that this has been an amazing conversation. And we are going to have to get you ladies back here to share whatever you all have going on and continue talking about how we can continue to build community and keep these awesome changes going. We are here every Monday at 7 p.m. Shared space with Chap, Quida, and friends. Thank you for joining us today, Miss Peel and Miss Diggs. We will have you guys back. And I'm going to go ahead and close us on out, y'all. And we will be back, same bat time, same bat channel. And if you're staying on Black News USA, Robert's show is coming up next. See you guys. Have a great one.